Our first paper is by Jeannie Bishop, and it's called Adapting to Different Ages in the Summer Camp Planetarium Curriculum.
Thank you, Marvin.
You're welcome.
It's a real pleasure for me to be here to present something that I really enjoyed doing this summer. It's something that I had never done before in a whole set of years of planetarium experience. We have a link program, that's what they call it at my school, where they take in kids that go kindergarten up to 8th grade, and that's going into those grades. And I was asked this year and last year to give programs that would be about certain topics, and a total of 5 different topics, and I'll go through that in a minute. But I needed to present them at different levels, and hence the title, Adapting to Different Ages in a Summer Camp Planetarium Program. So let's go on. Every day that I presented, I had 4 different levels to present at. And these are the kindergarten 1st grade, the 2nd and 3rd grades, 4th and 5th grades, and 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And I didn't separate them like this. This is already done by the link administration. There were 25 to 35 students in each group, more in the younger groups, probably because of older students being considered okay to stay at home while parents work. There are developmental differences in these age groups, and here are some of them. The ability to understand concepts and analogies, spatial ability, experience and past knowledge, vocabulary, sense of humor, and attention span. If you've worked with kids of different ages, I'm sure you're aware of those, and maybe you could add a few different ones to that too. The programs, as they turned out, were slightly different than this, and let me just go through what was selected. I gave them about 15 or 20 possibilities, and the administrators met with the actual teachers of the program, and these are the topics that were selected. The current night sky, what can we see? The solar system, the moon, the Milky Way, and let's travel to the Olympics in Rio and around the world. I actually added a 6th program for older students. It was the Egyptian sky, because some of the teachers were very interested in that, and yet they wanted all of these as well. And we also emphasized constellations and solar system as the Greek Olympic topic interacted with those. For the Let's Travel, the intent was to just go to Rio, but we ended up going around the world. So there were modifications as the program developed. These are the characteristics of all the programs. They were 35 to 45 minutes in length, less for the younger students. And planetarium, my planetarium isn't optical mechanical. I don't have an immersive digital planetarium. For older students, it was a fast-paced kind of program with a variety of different kinds of visuals, different demonstrations, as well as the planetarium itself. And we also had a thought-provoking discussion. For the younger ones, there was a lot of interaction with questions and more simple kinds of responses. But for the older ones, we delved into the kind of questions that would cause them to think more deeply. And more attention to stimulating interest and concept mastery was given. These are the procedures that I used. The use of the planetarium sky was paramount. And I have a feeling, and I always have, that whatever planetarium program you give, you ought to use that sky. Digital programs are good, but incorporate the sky, the real sky, in some way. And I certainly did this. I had maybe less to work with because I don't have a digital planetarium, but the students of all ages are always interested in the real sky. Slides, video clips, music and sounds, questions for students and from students, models and demonstrations, role-playing when appropriate, and decision-making discussions, like which planets would you like to visit? Not visit. Why? And I found that older students were much more concerned with hazards and risks. So if we got into talking about going to Mars, and they knew some things about Mars that might impact their well-being. They'd seen the movie Mars. They maybe would have a reluctance to go there. For the constellation topics in Current Sky, Milky Way, and Let's Travel, for the kindergarten and first grade, I found that the kids were able to pick out the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, the Summer Triangle, Scorpius, and Corona Borealis. And this is what I actually figured would happen because of their spatial ability, and I'm very interested in developmental spatial ability. The 5th and 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade students seem to be able to find all the constellations that I showed them for the summer sky, Boötes, Aquila, Capricornus, and even Virgo, which you probably know is a little bit harder to locate. For the constellation presentation in kindergarten and the first grade, again, notice that I say them together. They are together in a program. We would find and refine patterns. The repeating is good, and they don't mind it at the young age. In fact, it's good that they'll be excited when they can find something again that they found before. We used an overturned punch bowl dipper and the shadow on the dome made with a flashlight. I did this with older groups too, but it's not as necessary and it's not as relevant to their understanding, but this seemed to help with the younger kids, I should say. We connected star dots with projected lines and then removed them and found them again without the lines. I used no pictures beyond the dippers and the big bear. The children told me that they could not picture a bear in their minds without the projected picture. You know, I think that's a really relevant thing to all the kinds of programs that we give on constellations for young kids. When you point out a constellation and you put a picture over it and you say this is a certain thing, maybe they are not getting it, that they are not understanding that these stars were pictured as that particular named feature. In all 5 programs there was some mythology, and I used a major reference from someone who's sitting right here today, our GLPA president, Skylore from Planet Earth. She has an art book series that is absolutely wonderful, and there are a lot of things in there that were helpful. I also used Peter Lum's Stars in Our Heaven. This is old. This goes back to 1950s, I think, but it's one of the most wonderful books and sources of mythology that you'll ever find. And I changed the details between the younger and the older groups. That word M-I-C-M-A-C is Mi'kmaq. I spent some time about 2 weeks ago up in Nova Scotia where the Mi'kmaq Native Americans were. The Mi'kmaq and the Iroquois myth of the great bear and hunters, I bet you all tell. It's the Big Dipper, the bear is the bowl, and the stars of the handle are the 3 hunters. For kindergarten 1 and grades 2, 3, the bear merely hibernates and doesn't die. I don't have the bear die. And this is one way it has been told. He enters the den of Corona Borealis, which the young kids can see. Only 3 hunters, reducing the complexity. The handle stars of the Big Dipper follow the bear. In the older student presentation, there are more stars for hunters. The children role-played the bear and the hunters, while the rest of the group chanted to cheer the hunters on. So they can use their feet to make a rhythm. Please catch the bear. Please catch the bear. Or they can clap. And I also handled a drum and a rain stick to add rhythm. And one child drops red leaves, and that's when the bear is shot in the fall. The red leaf color is due to the blood spare dripping down on the trees. Kids love this. For the older students, the Mi'kmaq bear myth went like this. The bear dies and the spirit enters another bear. This is the way it really was told. No reenactment of Indians chasing the bear. Full set of hunters, chasers identified behind the bear, right on down to Arcturus. Demonstration of changing positions of the bear in the night sky through the cycle of the year, and then a discussion of how Native Americans could use the bear stars as an indication of seasons and how light pollution affects our seeing these stars today. For the Greek myths, I related the Olympian gods to the Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro. I minimized the sexual exploits of the Olympian gods. I used whole suite, the planets, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. Those are the only three I used to illustrate characteristics of ancient gods and planets. And for the younger groups, I asked some students to pretend they were planets and tell two things about themselves, and the others had to guess who they were. For planet positions and motions, I like to include, the night sky positions, even for young kids. Motions is harder, is a topic that's harder for the young ones. Since most students in K3 have difficulty mentally transferring between 2 points of view, they don't understand how a distant planet like Jupiter can be seen close to the sun. And they don't understand why the Milky Way is a band around the sky and relate that to the spiral that we see from outer space. They can't get this projective view. For 4, 5, and 6, 8 groups, I showed planet motions and explained the positions and motions with a model. And students in 4, 5, and 6, 8 groups took parts of Earth, Sun, and Venus, and Jupiter in a kinesthetic model showing what happens in space. Yesterday, we had a wonderful GLPA meeting in which we were doing lots of reenactment, creative reenactment. I have always called this kinesthetic kind of models when I'm trying to show something that is like a model of the Earth and the Sun and Venus, and people are taking those positions. And it gets fun. It really is fun. And I can do it right in the planetarium, and sometimes the projector itself is the sun. Just put a sun ball up there, but I had a person stand there with a ball. I selected my words carefully, especially for younger groups, and tried to remember to make sentences shorter and repeat special terms. Go slower, repeat, and the terms, be very careful what they are and define them. Recognize that the ideas about gravity, density, gas, distances and time are developing, especially for the K-3 group kids, and that many misconceptions of older students are revealed by questions and discussion. They come out for younger kids too, but because we had longer discussions with the older groups, I could pinpoint what they were. I anticipated some of them and tried to correct others as they became apparent. And these are some misconceptions I found. Okay, thank you. There's no gravity in space. Gas is always less dense than liquids and solids. Melting and dissolving mean the same thing. We see light instantly after it leaves a star, or reflected light instantly after it leaves a planet. People have traveled to other planets. They really, almost all believe that we've been beyond the moon. The solar system formed in a smooth and non-chaotic way. To the K3 students, I found that it was not really appropriate to spend too much time on the origin of the solar system, but the older students are always interested in origins. Everything, black hole, the universe, everything. So in the topic of solar system, I remembered Dr. Michael Turner's colorful chalk diagrams. He used them in the Baton Rouge presentation he gave at IPS 212, and also in cosmology talks at the Kavli Institute. And so, because developing these chalk diagrams real time, it's your interest going, I created collisions of magnetic dots, and some stuck and some reflected, some broke apart other dot groups, conveying the dynamic nature of the solar system. The kids really liked this, and I had to explain what was wrong with the model every time I used a model, especially this one, but I think they got the idea. For the Milky Way program, it was effective to turn down the background light by notches to describe a trip into the dark countryside, and all ages understood light pollution. For the 4-5, that should be a dash, and the 6-8 groups, I extended the discussion into things like structure of the universe with galaxies, dark matter, and the Big Bang, and I used Halloween gauze to demonstrate strands and holes, the structure of the universe. We traveled to Rio and then around the world, and this was my surprise. Students in the 3 oldest age groups responded when I presented at a fast pace and used unexpected analogies and procedures, which is not best for learning a concept, but good for capturing interest. And I'll continue with slower pace, fewer concepts, and more thorough explanations for the older kids for normal school planetarium visits. But I really would love to see having different goals, whether your goal is just to inspire and motivate and get interest versus real understanding. I'd like to see some research relating these different types of programs and the goals. And thank you very much.
Okay, y'all give it up for Jean. Okay, our next presenter, the name of the paper is Putting the E Back in STEM, Free Engineering Materials for the Planetarium. Talia?
Close enough, Talia.
Talia. Sorry about that.
No, it happens all the time. All right. Hi guys, I am from the Museum of Science Boston, and I want to give you free stuff. So a few years ago, we entered into a partnership with NASA at the Charles Hayden Planetarium to create a show based on spacecraft engineering. That show is called Dream to Discovery inside NASA. And as part of it, we created 3 education modules that focus on things that we talk about very briefly during the show. Goes into a lot more detail. And they are designed, you don't have to see the show. This is, it supplements the show, but you don't actually have to see the show. So it's 3 modules, which we are providing free of charge. They are yours if you want them. And the first one is Fixing the Hubble Space Telescope. So this is the most straightforward. They all have different formats and different narrative models. And this is the most straightforward of the 3. It's basically just a video. It's about 8 minutes long. And part of the narration is just our narrator, and she sort of sets the stage and fills in any gaps provided by our second narrator, who is Dr. Jeffrey Hoffman, who actually flew on the shuttle mission that saved Hubble. And it focuses on a few different things. It starts off talking about how Hubble works and what went wrong with it. So some of those are shots of Hubble in space, as you kind of saw in the background of the last slide. Here we've got what we call blueprint space with a cutaway of the telescope showing you sort of how it works inside. And we go into detail about what exactly went wrong, and then we talk about how they fixed it. So the sort of second half is not just how they fixed it and the shuttle mission that fixed it. This is largely where Dr. Hoffman comes in. He talks throughout the whole thing, but where his voice is really, really effective. He's not just talking about what they did and how they fixed it. He also talks about what it was like, which is really, really awesome. What it was like to actually touch the Hubble Space Telescope. And the ending, it's sort of this idea that we come across a few times in our modules, that we wanted to emphasize the idea that failure is not the end point. If there's a failure, that's not it. So the last thing that we talk about in this module is not how Hubble has changed our view of space, although we do talk about that. The last thing we talk about is Dr. Hoffman saying, failure is not a problem, not learning from a failure. That's where you have the problem. So, like I said, that one is pretty straightforward. The next one is a little bit more complicated. Gravity and Space Travel is the title. And this one is, it's about gravity assists. And gravity assists, it turns out, are kind of tricky to explain. So this one's broken up into 5 clips. It's about 7 minutes total. And we designed it so that you can use if you want to edit all 5 segments into one unbroken video, you can do that. If you only want to show some of them, you can do that. We did design it for maximum adaptability. And the different segments sort of focus on different things. The first one introduces the concept, because of course a gravity assist is a bad name. It's actually a momentum transfer. So the first clip defines the word momentum and introduces the idea that this is not, a gravity assist, it is a momentum transfer. And to sort of help ground that in something a little more familiar, the second clip is, big thanks to our local roller derby team. So what we have here is our primary skater is holding still, and her teammates are running at her, and she's linking arms with them and swinging them around, and their direction is changing. But that's it. Their direction is changing.
Yeah, just for a moment.
All right, and so that is what it kind of looks like is going on if it's just gravity at work. But of course, it's actually a momentum transfer. So the second half of this segment shows that first skater. She's actually skating backwards as her teammate comes at her, links arms and swings around, and you can see her teammates then speed up dramatically. So you can sort of see in action what it is, using something a little less out of this world, dare I say, than a spacecraft. But when we do relate that same principle to a spacecraft, specifically the Jupiter encounter by New Horizons. So we're in this sort of overhead blueprint space, and we actually look at what the mission would have done without the Jupiter encounter, and this is with the Jupiter encounter. You can see New Horizons, we've got a little speed gauge there. New Horizons speed increases dramatically. Segment 4 focuses on the idea that you can also use a gravity assist to slow a spacecraft down, using the same general principle, kind of in reverse. And then segment 5 brings up the idea that you can use multiple gravity assists in one mission, and that many missions are not possible without gravity assists. And as you can see, what we've got is an overhead view of the solar system here with many missions showing lots and lots of gravity assists happening. And so those are the 5 segments of gravity in space travel. And again, you can do live interpretation in between if you want. You can. We've actually had people recreate the roller skater thing in their theater, just not with skates. Don't do that unless you're really good. And then that brings me to our third module, which is the most complicated of the 3, design a mission. The idea here is that you and your audience are going to design a mission to look for signs of water somewhere in the solar system. You're going to have to make 3 decisions in the process of designing your mission. And because that means there are several possible permutations, this has a total of 13 video clips. But you're not going to use all of them for any one mission. It's just whichever ones they pick. So your first choice is you choose Mars or Saturn. You're going to go look at Mars, you're going to go look at Saturn. And then you would, as the facilitator or the teacher, describe a little bit about what it's like at Mars, what it's like at Saturn, so that they have the information to design the rest of their spacecraft. Because the next thing they need to choose is, it's going to be a lander or is it going to be an orbiter? And then they have to choose, is it going to be solar powered? Is it going to be nuclear powered? And every time they make a choice, they are presented with their choices. So here they've chosen a lander. It's based on Huygens. This is Cassini essentially, with Huygens on the side. And what they're choosing here, is it going to be nuclear powered or is it going to be solar powered? You've got one or the other. So that means you've got 4 possible outcomes for Mars, and then 4 possible outcomes for Saturn. Solar orbiter, solar lander, nuclear orbiter, nuclear lander. And if they chose Mars, all 4 of those succeed. So if they go to Mars, they are going to find evidence of water. If they chose a lander, they are going to get a nice shot of the Curiosity landing sequence. And they're going to find the blueberry deposits, they're going to find frost, they're going to find silica deposits. If they chose an orbiter, they're going to find river channels, hydrogen deposits, and rampart craters. Now, if they chose Saturn, most of those missions don't succeed. So if they designed their spacecraft poorly, they are not going to succeed. If they chose the nuclear orbiter, which is the only one that will survive at Saturn, they will find evidence of water in the geysers of Enceladus and in Saturn's E-ring. If they chose a solar-powered spacecraft, as their spacecraft is traveling through space, the picture's going to turn fuzzy and go black as their spacecraft loses power. And if they chose the nuclear-powered lander, they get my favorite sequence, their spacecraft heating up and then exploding in the atmosphere. Now, again, we want to emphasize the idea that, okay, so yeah, you failed, but that's not the end point. Guess what? This happens in real life. So there is one more video clip that shows a sequence of real spacecraft that were built and sent out into space and failed. It's Phobos Grunt, it's Vanguard, the Mars Climate Orbiter. As of yesterday, we could have added Schiaparelli, but... so again, the idea is that failure happens, and that's not the end point. The end point is if you don't learn from the failure. Now, in addition to the modules themselves, we have a sequence of guides that go with each of them. They have the full scripts, they have some interpretation suggestions, they have some questions and answers that you might get from the audience. a whole lot of background information. The idea being that you could hand this to somebody who doesn't know, a presenter who doesn't know much about this stuff, and they could present it using the material in the guides. And there's a couple of ways you can get these materials. Our website, mos.org/fulldome, has 1K QuickTime versions of all the modules and planetarian and teacher guides. I think they're sort of in bundles, planetarian bundles and teacher bundles. For the teacher bundle, they're flat screen versions, and the Design a Mission is actually a web-based activity. But all the guides are on there. And then the planetarium bundles are 1K full dome QuickTimes. And if you would like 4K Dome Masters, there is a website there. I also have it written down. If you can't read it up there, I can give it to you. As well as 5.1 or stereo audio files. And other versions may be available, 2K, etc. If you get in touch with us at fulldome@mos.org. I do have a few, like 6 sticks here, which have some, I think it's the 1K QuickTimes on here. So I have like 6 of those I'm happy to give out. And we really love finding out how people are using these. So if you want to tell us how you're using them, that's my email, tsapersky@mos.org. And I would really love to hear from you how you're using these and what you think of them. I can take questions too if
Anybody got any questions?
Go ahead, Jean.
I have a simple technical question. If I don't have full dome, If I don't have full dome, is it possible to use what you have on your memory stick for me to just plug in a computer and show on a flat screen?
You know, I'm not 100% certain now that I'm staring at them, trying to use my x-ray vision. That's not how that works. They're certainly available on the website for free download.
Okay.
In a flat screen version.
Okay, great.
And then, again, if you're in a classroom, the Design a Mission is a web-based. Are you looking at a? Do you have a web
I
connection?
have a planetarium, it's just that I don't have a full dome scheme.
Well, you know what? You want to take one of these just?
I would love
in
to,
case.
and I'll let you know if it works.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't worry about it.
Could you just tell us a little bit about what has happened as you've used these modules with the students? What's the reaction?
It depends which group of students you're using it for, and we found different places are using them. Some of them are using them. Some people are using the Design a Mission as sort of an engineering camp activity. Seems to go over very well because that one's very, very interactive. Depending on your audience, recreating the roller skater demo with gravity assist, people really like doing that. And for the Hubble module, just once you hear Jeff speak about how awesome it was to actually put his hands on the space telescope.
What ages, though, are you?
And again, we were aiming, the show Dream to Discovery is aimed at sort of 7th grade, 8th grade, and these are sort of based off of that, but based on how you want to do the interpretation, I would be comfortable doing this. We've done Design a Mission with much younger groups, for instance.
But the concepts, I'm just concerned about what level of concept presentation is needed for the students to get it, to understand what you're doing.
And that would depend on your group as well. So what we do is we basically give you, we're trying to give you all the materials you might want and all the background information you might need, and then the actual delivery and interpretation of the activity is we leave in your hands. So if you want to run them without, we've had people run them without the sound and just use the visuals. We've had people only use certain segments from Gravity Assist instead of using all 5. Because some of them go a little more into depth about. So it's really, we've tried to make this whole thing as adaptable as possible so that As much as we're aiming, it was designed sort of with middle schoolers in mind. You could adapt it if you wanted to other groups.
Is there time just for a real quick comment?
Oh no, we gotta move on to the next.
2 seconds. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Exactly what we need. I can't wait.
Sounds good. Hi, I am Katie Asetta. I am from the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center over in Bay Village, next to Cleveland in Ohio. And our planetarium is a little bit different. We hang out with 3-year-olds more than we hang out with adults or any other type of age group. What happened was we have this show. It's called Twinkle Tots. It's adorable. And our show Twinkle Tots has been going on for, I talked to my supervisor, she said it's been going on for about 20 years now. And it's gone through different variations of basically the same show. Getting kids in the planetarium, used to the dark, see some stars, see the moon, and we're done. It's only about 15 minutes long, but we noticed we were having a problem with a lot of the preschoolers. What had happened was we were showing kids constellations. And we were talking about the lion in the sky, the crab in the sky, all these different animals in the nighttime sky. And then the kids were getting really confused as to why they couldn't go outside and see an actual crab in the sky, or why there isn't a lion up there. So it got us wondering, what really is age appropriate for a 3-year-old in the planetarium? So what happened was we sat down with our preschool experts. So we're actually a certified preschool as well. There's preschool going down at the end of the room, and then planetariums on the other side of the building. Our preschool experts, who have been long in the field of studying early childhood psychology, said that before the age of 7, children can't understand abstract things like constellations, space, or time. You tell them something's really far away, they've got no idea. Also, what we were doing was we were tossing these kids into the dark very quickly. Yeah, there were constellations in the sky, and yeah, we were fading it down, but they were still stuck on, why can't I see a lion in the real sky? And then we fade it to dark, and they were getting really upset. Kids were crying, running around the planetarium all the time, and we just decided, this isn't cool. We are making what's supposed to be a fun experience very terrifying for most of our kids. So about a year and a few months ago, we decided to completely rewrite the show. And it had amazing results so far. So we have some new goals. So we're just trying to get kids to the difference between light and dark, and that the dark isn't scary. We're trying to expose them to night and day. When it's day, it's light. When it's dark, it's night. Basic concepts like that. We're trying to get them to understand that the sun is a star. That the moon is we call the moon a ball, but it's a sphere. They don't know the word sphere, so the moon's a ball. And that stars shine night and day. The stars don't just disappear when the sun comes out. Trying to convey that. Now, not every show covers these particular topics, but if you come to a bunch of shows, you will eventually cover it, because we're on a 10-week rotating schedule. So maybe one week we'll just be talking about the moon, and then the next week we're just talking about the sun. So you're not hitting all of these points in every single 15-minute show, but if you come regularly, we do hit most of these points. So this is where the fun begins. We put the kids totally in charge of their environment. Once you get them in charge of their environment, they feel much more comfortable. So we have a Chromacove LED system. So what happens is we start out with a white dome, and we tell the kids to look up. Kids have to be told to look up, because otherwise they're so focused on what's right in front of them, we have to point out, hey, there's a crazy ceiling up there, look up. And then we do tell them that the ceiling is magic, but they kind of get the point that it's not actually magic. So we have them stick their arms in the air and wave their arms around and shout out a color. And we'll do different colors on the dome. We get your regular colors. We get like red, and then we ask the kids to name something else that's red. So it has nothing to do with astronomy yet, but it's getting them used to looking up and thinking about what they're seeing. So when we change the ceiling red, I ask, what else is red? And they're like, oh, fire trucks and strawberries. And I had one kid shout out, wine.
The parents are having a good time.
Yeah. If anyone asks for blue right away, I always tell them blue's my favorite and we should save it for last, and they're totally okay with that. Because when we go to blue, it gives us the opportunity to talk about blue is the same color as the sky. And then we ask, what is in the sky in the daytime? What is in the sky in the nighttime? That kind of stuff. And then we give them the control of reaching up to the sky, grabbing the blue light, and pulling it down. They stick it in their pockets, I tell them to stick it in their sock, whatever. Just get rid of the blue light so we can see the stars. Then there's a problem. There's no stars. We create this false sense of urgency. There's no stars. The stars are hiding. So we have to sing the stars' favorite song. And then the stars will come out and dance. So we sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And every single kid and every single parent is belting out Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in our planetarium. Then the stars come out and we do a light show. With some really fun music. Our music rotates on a 10-week schedule too. Let me see if I can get it going. It's fun stuff like this. Goofy.
Twinkle, twinkle, little, little stars.
He wants to find his way to Mars. But the kids love it. We turn off the side lights though, so when the dome goes black, they're in total darkness. But they're listening to Goofy sing, they're having so much fun that they totally forget that they're afraid of the dark. Then, once the light show ends, we end on a blue sky and we blast off to a different planet of the day. So we'll just go to like Saturn and we'll learn some basic facts about Saturn. It's a planet. It's got rings that go all the way around it. It's really big. And then we're done. We don't try to tell them anything more because we found that kids are more interested in planets than they are in constellations. So, why not talk about the planets? We do the moon about twice in our 10-week rotating schedule because, come on, the moon's cool. And kids just love it. Then, we do toss them into total darkness. We fade down to black, and we have just the stars spinning, and we have some calming music, and the kids sit in total darkness for about 3 minutes just watching the stars and listening to the calm music. Now, if kids do get a little worried or upset, we do have some friends to hang out with them. We've got Superman, who flies around the stars. Sometimes Superman will trace out constellations, or he'll dance from star to star, but we don't say this is a constellation. We'll just trace over the Big Dipper over and over and over again. And Superman has a friend. Superman has Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell? Tinkerbell dances around. We even have a bell that we ring. Kids know, like, Tinkerbell's coming! So the lasers distract the kids from being afraid again. It's all about redirection. So if they're terrified of being in the dark, Superman and Tinkerbell are there. They're safe. They don't have to worry about anything. And then we're done. It's a 15-minute show and we're done. Now before, we used to have kids crying their eyes out because they were in the planetarium, and the planetarium is scary. Now, we have a totally different attitude from these 3-year-olds coming into the planetarium. They're excited to go to the planetarium. They do little dances all the way down the hallway, from the line all the way down the hallway. They're excited, they're running, jumping. Parents are impressed. Parents are saying, my kid's not gonna last in the planetarium. He's afraid of the dark. And I say, well, just give him a chance. You can stand in the back. Just give him a chance. The dome turned his favorite color orange. He was hooked for the rest of the show. Because we put the kids in control. We have them in charge. And we do fun stuff. And there's not really any lecturing or anything like that. We do have kids cry, but it's because the show is over. I mean, they're like clinging onto the chairs. Parents are pulling them away, saying, I don't want to leave the stars. So it's a complete 180 from what we had before. And our whole philosophy is the lesson teaches itself. our main goal of having preschoolers in the planetarium is that we want them to come back as adults and learn more. So why not make it a fun experience when they're children, so that they have that excitement to come back into the planetarium as they grow up. So we just believe the lesson teaches itself now. We've had stunning success with our rewrite. I think we've had about, one kid cry the entire time, but that was different circumstances. But that is our brand new Twinkle Tot show.
Does anyone have any questions?
I'm just curious about like the top age that comes to the show. So you said 3-year-olds, but do parents bring older kids or?
We've had 2-week-olds come.
Oh.
They're watching the lights, they're loving it. And we even have, back at that one picture that this one. This is one of our preschool classes, the Nature Nuts kids. They're 5 years old. But we have even had older brothers come with, their 3-year-old sister, then, older brothers are like 7 or something. They're loving it too. I mean, kids, they seem to really respond well. They, no age, except for maybe like 10 and up, think it's too baby for them. They still have fun. The dome still changes color, and the light show is really what hooks them.
Sorry, I was trying to write down everything you said as you went along, because I work with preschoolers sometimes too. Tell me again. You say blue for last, and then how do you get them into the darkness that first time?
Well, we have them say, we ask them what's in the sky in the nighttime, and then they say, well, first they shout the moon, and we always respond with, well, sometimes. But then they say the stars, and I ask them, do you want to see the stars? And they're really excited to see the stars, because it's been like 5 minutes in the planetarium and they haven't seen any stars yet. So then I tell them that they have to help make it nighttime. We never say the word dark.
Right.
That's something really important. We never say the word dark. So we always replace dark with nighttime. So I have them help me make it nighttime. So they reach up to the sky and they grab some blue light and then they pull it down and stick it in their pocket, or you can have them stick it wherever you want.
But then you don't have the stars on at that point.
No, and while they're doing that, I forgot to mention, we're fading it down.
Black?
We still have the side lights on, dimmed.
Okay.
Or sometimes I've even had some brave groups where we turned off the side lights and we had just a little bit of blue still showing.
Right, that's what I thought, perhaps just the slightest bit of blue cove.
Yeah, there's that anticipation of, we're gonna see the stars. So they've completely forgotten that it's dark and they're supposed to be afraid. So we usually have the corner lights on.
So the equivalent would be a city sky.
Basically.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little brighter because our corner lights aren't the greatest.
Have you used that technique for some younger autistic audiences, or?
We've actually done special shows of Twinkle Tots for autistic groups that came in, and they loved it too. They still had like their iPads on or something like that, so they still had a glow, so it wasn't total darkness. But the advantage that we have is we use our UniView system to do the stars and blast off to the planets or anything. So when UniView is totally dark, it's really not that dark. So that's a big advantage. I think part of our problem too was we were going all the way full dark with just our star ball in the old versions of the show. And that's actually pretty dark.
It's pretty dark.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I just want to compliment you on admitting failure, and you learned a lot from it. And the idea of helping you is the same as asking permission. I never made total darkness with students of that age unless I asked their permission.
Exactly.
And you don't have to ask their permission, because by helping you, that's the permission.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes.
University students, by the way, love colors on the dome too.
Yeah. We got some awesome light shows in Chroma Code for you. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.